right, everybody, good morning. It is that time. Welcome now to our third installment of what is this? Coffee with the Dean? Coffee with the Dean. I still keep saying Dean's Forum, but that's loaded, so we'll stick with Coffee with the Dean. So this is our third installation, and the very first of these, as you'll recall, was just sort of to get to know you. Who's Paul? What are his unique pathologies? How will they affect us? And last month, you'll recall, it was a little more focused around communication patterns. What came out of that conversation was a document that is now up on the website and will start to make appearances around the close of the cathedral, which had to do with what we call rules for respect. They were sort of language patterns and normative ways that we'll communicate with one another. This month is somewhat of a departure, and this month, every so often what we will do at this time, because it is the one occasion within a month where there aren't sort of a series of things happening throughout the congregation, it's the one time in a month where we could unveil something to the majority of folks who show up on a Sunday morning for a program. That's what we're going to do this month, which is that we've got a couple of things that we want to roll out so that people are hearing them ahead of time, so that at least a percentage of the congregation will know what our intention is behind these particular rollouts, and so that you'll know what's coming. You can advocate for it, cheerlead it, and if folks ask you things like, well, where did this come from? And I didn't even know about this. You can say, oh, well, we had a very informative coffee. Right? You should have been there. And in fact, I would recommend you go to the next one. So, of course, we laid the groundwork for that response last month in the rules for respect and how we communicate. So this is, again, one of those things where we reinforce that everyone's welcome to be part of the body, everyone gets to participate, and that participation has a certain shape, which often shows up on these third Sundays with the Dean. So, very first thing, overview of the 45-minute block. Our intention is that it will go like this. That I'm going to say a quick word about kind of leavening the loaf for Advent, some pre-Advent conversation specifically around color stuff. That will take just a very few minutes. Then I will switch over to an intro to some work around the branding task force, which has been very hard at work, has produced some beautiful things on our community's behalf, and is ready now to start implementing some of the language and some of the imagery from that project. And we want folks to have a heads up about that, and also so that folks have a realistic vision for how that gets rolled out, which is never all at once. It will take a little bit of time. So we want folks to understand what our intentions are for rolling it out, and then we'll hand it off to the folks who led the process of getting us to what the branding looks like and what it says, and they'll be available for conversation about what that has produced. Does that sound like a decent use of 45 minutes? Okay. Good luck. So first thing is a quick word about Advent. Folks around here, how many folks are familiar with Sarum Blue as the Advent color? Okay, a few. And how about folks for whom you would expect to show up on the first Sunday of Advent and see purple everywhere? A few, yeah. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. Purple's the color, it's a good color. So we're going to talk about that briefly, partly because we don't want to make a big deal out of it, but because visual stuff really matters, particularly in our sacred spaces. When we show up and see a change, it has the potential to signal to us that in some ways the world is in fact coming to an end. And never is that more true than, in fact, Advent 1, which is, in fact, the story is that the beginning is near, or the end is near, but the beginning of the new calendar year is near, and here, in fact. And so we signal it with a change of color anyways. We have been in the long season of green, right, the very long, complicated preaching season of Pentecost and late Pentecost. And so when we show up on the first Sunday of Advent, things look different. And my understanding is, up until quite recently, even last year perhaps, folks showed up and the color that was there on the first Sunday of Advent was purple. Is this true?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just want to give a heads up, that is not going to be the case this year. So I want to say that first, and then I want to say just a quick word about why. It is not going to be the case, first, because we have received a very generous gift to put towards some other memorial funds we had to finally purchase a set of Sarum Blue Advent vestments and coverings. And so we have done that out of the generosity of some folks who thought that that made sense for the cathedral. So we have resources to do it. It is a gift to the cathedral to do that. So now why? Why would we do that? It has been customary to presume that Advent is penitential the way that Lent is penitential, right? And of course the color for penitential season of Lent is purple, which is really a color of royalty, right? It is a color of royalty, which in a certain sense is profoundly ironic, right? The season of Lent is all about irony, right? And reclaiming royalty in a very new way. And that time of the year deserves its own focus. It deserves its own center and integrity. And one of the ways that we do that is that we mark it out by color. Right? We mark the time with color. Purple will show up everywhere, and that's important. Advent, while it has been considered somewhat penitential because it is introspective, right? It really isn't penitential the same way. It is introspective, just like Lent is, but it is introspective in the sense of excitement and hope and promise. It is about preparation in a way that deserves its own integrity as well, differentiating it from Lent. It is not unusual for Advent vestments to have purple woven into them with a predominant backdrop of Sarum Blue. We're just going to give it a go, right? Because I think that, particularly for my children who have grown up only to know blue in Advent and thereafter, that to differentiate time over the course of the year gives the message of Advent its own integrity for them. It allows us to focus our preaching toward it, despite the fact that some of the hymnody, well, much of the hymnody of Advent is very heavy, which you'll hear and note, which has its own sense of irony as well, that there has something to do with what we would call kenosis, or self-emptying, to prepare for Christ's entry, right, into our lives. That's the whole theme. So we're going to demarcate that with its own color. That will show up the first Sunday of Advent, which is the 30th of November. So I want you to know that. If folks have particular feedback, preferences, theological conundrums, you are welcome to come and talk with me about that. I would love to talk with you about it. Our practice will be this, though. Lou will show up first Sunday of Advent, but would love to talk about it if you think it should be otherwise. And we'll do that in my office or for coffee, and I will buy. Quick opening here for questions, comments about that. The very briefest of which, Jim?
It seems to me like we've been waiting for this set for a couple of years, so this is not something that just came upon us.
Correct. This has been in the works for several months, darn near 2.5 years worth of time. So this has been coming. This isn't a Paul initiative, although I'm happy to be the person who reflects back with folks about why we've done it. Anything else?
Can you hold up the color?
I will happily do so. Actually, we have a lovely assistant who will hold up our colors. Sarah Nolan.
Here's for Vanna.
Take it through. Yeah, so these are vestments from Gaspard, which is a spectacular producer. This is the same company who I understand has done the Cathedral Red set. And we may well be looking toward a Cathedral Festival white set for bishops' visits and things of that nature. So these will be up here through this whole time. Folks are welcome to come up and see it. Shortly after this, though, Terry Erickson is going to grab these and rush them off to the safe room and keep them until Advent. All right, piece 2, about branding. Of course, I'll leave the vast majority of this time to our two very handsome presenters, Cliff and Doug, who will explain the whole process and reveal the product. But what I don't think that this wades into their territory per se, but I do want to say a little bit about why this kind of branding project matters to me. One of the reasons it matters to me is that we're entering kind of an interesting age in the world, I think, of the practice of religion publicly. And culturally, I grew up in a context where any sense of boundaries or normative identity, where we actually carved out a space that said, we're this, which presumed we are not this, I think it was downplayed a little bit. I think we've been sort of in a cultural trajectory where difference has been assumed to be divisive. And so in a certain sense, we would just call ourselves mainline Christians, right? And oftentimes what that means is a way of saying we are not something else, which in our cultural milieu tends to mean we're not Roman Catholic, or we're not primarily conservative evangelical Christian or sola scriptura Christians. But we're sort of part of this vast swath of mainline Christianity, which ends up kind of being somewhat undifferentiated, right? Which is lovely in the sense that it's broadly inclusive. The problem with that, and I hear this particularly from folks younger than me, among our millennials, the problem with that is that I think it has the potential to have us lose the benefit of being able to say, but we are this, right? We actually are this. That as Anglicans, we can affirm a positive identity that has a cultural heritage, a deep theological heritage, vast wisdom about the way our tradition has come to understand its grasp, or lack thereof, of truth. And it's a gift. And so there's this sense that we can carve out an identity that says we are this without that affirmation having to diminish the value of anything else. And so I think folks are looking for that, right? A positive statement that says, Anglicans have come to understand Jesus through these resources. The practice of the spiritual life for Anglicans has tended to include these particular things. The battles, theological or otherwise, that Anglicans have tended not to put a lot of time and energy into are these various things for all these reasons, right? And so in a sense, we can shape a corporate identity as people of faith that actually has some integrity to it, where we can say, here's what we bring to the table in terms of theological discourse. We don't understand the authority or reality of Scripture these other ways because we've historically understood it this way, right? So there's some boundary to it. That is true not only in terms of ecclesiology, how we fit within the larger body of Christ, but I think that it's true within the ecumenical community and the interfaith community in town, for example. Those who were at the installation heard Marcia Zimmerman say fairly clearly, we think that you have a particular something to bring to the table and we have missed it. And there's a spot at the table with a certain shape in it that is Episcopal, right? It's got a shape to it, and it brings a set of lenses to the table and a certain kind of voice and a certain set of values, and we miss that. And you will hear me talk Episcopal 101 on a regular basis because it has taken me years and years and years to figure out what this treasure is that we have in a denomination. And I think it's worth holding up because I think it's good stuff, right? The branding, as I understand it, and the reason it matters to me, is a couple things. At the practical level, it helps us carve out a consistent identity, right? Just in terms of if someone is on holy space that's connected to St. Mark's and ECMN, the Episcopal Church in Minnesota, they will know it because the signage on that end of the campus looks like the signage on that end of the campus. And everything in between looks the same, right? You will know where you're at and who you're with by what it looks like around you. So there's part of this branding stuff is about coherence. Part two, the particular kind of branding we've done is also about expanding the encounter point or opening the threshold to our place a little bit by saying you don't have to come in and hang out with us first to know what we value as priorities, right? we're going to cast that out for you, right? You'll know about our priorities and our values before you ever even come in, right? And you're going to hear 3 I words that talk about our core values, right? The fact that we're an inquiring community, an inspiring community, and an inclusive community. And we can unpack those over the course of years. But what that says is we understand folks deserve to know what our heart is before they ever show up. Right? It's just a good piece of evangelism. Just to say, we know that it's scary to cross the threshold yourself and to learn about us. So we're going to tell you a bit about us before you ever have to do that. And this is one of the key ways that we do that. And it doesn't hurt that it's beautifully done, which tells the community, very much Anglican, because we believe that the incarnation is what saves and what changes everything. The stuff is beautiful. It is really beautiful because aesthetics is a primary value of Anglicanism, right? It gets called superficial and fuddy-duddy, but we believe that God shows up in beauty, right? Because that's what the kingdom of God is about. Beautiful places, dark places, difficult places, God is in all of it. And so I couldn't be more excited than to hear from our presenters about the branding project. Doug and Cliff, it's all yours.
Beautiful. That's a great setup. Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Eichten, a member of the congregation, member of the council, and proud to be a member of the branding task force. Many of you, as I look around the room, have been around St. Mark's for a while. I've observed in the past 30 years there have been many branding projects here. I've been on 2 before this one. I don't know, you probably have been on some of them. All failed or reached very limited results. Apologies to everybody who was in charge. But I am very happy to tell you, at least in my humble opinion, we've got success. And that's what we're here to share with you this morning. In February, our highly effective, beloved interim spiritual leader, Bishop Bruce, requested that a communications task force be created to work on the St. Mark's brand. So here we go again. And but the reason I believe this is successful is because he chose for the chair of this task force, Betsy Shallow, right back here. And Philip with the camera over here. A number of us wise advisors were chosen to help them, but I'm going to tell you, all the work was done by them. They're very dedicated, talented. They insisted that nothing goes forward unless it's right. They went through draft after draft, and Betsy in particular showed extremely effective leadership through this process. I was very impressed. And I'd just like to say, what this points out is, it should point out to all of us, there's lots of talent in this community, in our community here at St. Mark's. And we just need to foster it and let it blossom, and I think this has really happened here. Kim DeSalt, who's on the cathedral staff, was a key player. And then the wise advisors, Rachel Wright, who's up practicing for the choir right now, did a great job, especially in helping pin down the words in the positioning statement that I'll read in a few minutes. Cliff Crockford, who's right back here, he will be doing the pictures, the graphics, all the real stuff. I'm just the setup guy, and then myself to join this group, and it's truly been a pleasure to be part of it and see the progress. The group started out reviewing all the current uses in the past few years, the many logos and so forth that were in usage all at the same time, and feedback from the parish survey, feedback from council members, from many people in this room, feedback from Bishop Brian, and so the work began. Brand, my night job is I teach graduate level marketing courses for Rebecca Hawthorne over at St. Catherine University. So the one thing I know about brand is it means something different to everybody. But what it means here, I think, is our promise, our aspirations, and I don't need to say too much more about it because Paul did a great job setting this up. So I'm not going to get deeper, and most of you know that I can't stay in an Anglican conversation for very long. But who are we? What are we here to do? How are we different from others? Donna and I, like many of you, drive by a dozen churches to get here every Sunday. Why is that? Why is that important? So we started down the road about what is unique to St. Mark's. Unique as an Episcopal church. Unique from surrounding churches, and unique among community organizations. Find out where we might fit this. So we developed, with some considerable work, a position statement to give us the base for the work that would follow. And I'll just read it. Every word was labored over, and you will have your own opinions about these words. These are not meant for the public, but they guided our work. St. Mark's. For thinkers seeking spiritual meaning and experience, St. Mark's Episcopal Cathedral is the inclusive and diverse congregation that offers continuing evolution of faith and community built on a sacred tradition of music, liturgy, and reason. All words carefully chosen, and many words considered that are not in that statement. So from there, one of the brilliant parts about the work of this task force was to hone all this down to 3 words. And I just happened to think, it wasn't my idea, but I think it was Betsy and Philip primarily, and Cliff and others. But honing this down to 3 words that we all can understand and use is just brilliant. And the words are timeless, and they're meant to expect who we have been, to express who we have been, who we are, and most importantly, who we will be. So I'm just going to read a little statement about each one of them. The words stand on their own and will be used in many places, but we've developed a little statement about each to help understand them. We are inquiring. Reason is one of the 3 legs of the Episcopal faith. At St. Mark's, we are not told what to think or believe. Instead, we use our minds to grow in faith. Our children are taught to wonder about the stories they are told in children's ministry. I'm not a very good juggler, so I'm doing it. Okay. Our worship is inspiring. In worship at St. Mark's, minds, souls, spirits are lifted closer to God through meaningful liturgy and heavenly music in a magnificent space. We are inspired to go out into the world and live our faith. And finally, we are inclusive. St. Mark's is not the only church to say all are welcome, but we do more than say it. Inclusion is one of the main fibers woven into the tapestry that is our community. It makes us who we are, rich in diversity of thought, age, income, culture, race, and gender preference. We appreciate the diversity and put great efforts and resources giving life to the inclusion. Now, Cliff, it's all yours. Thank you, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Lots of words, and I'm really just a spokesperson for what Philip created. When you think about all those words, there's no way that you're going to be able to remember them, or maybe you can, but I can't. I mean, I don't know what happened to that.
Oh, John.
That just was not helpful. This is what? It's going to be really tough. There's also one more board.
Yes, he took it.
Isn't there a board? That's perfect.
Wrecking his presentation here.
Yeah, I mean, this is really a challenge. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, I was not going to use notes because I had to hang on to this thing. At any rate, 2/3, 1/3. If you think about the creative process, this is just creativity 101. All the work that was done relative to creating words and language needs somehow to be transferred into graphics. So when you see what you see and what we'll show you was because of the work that's done under here. Now what happens is that all that information and the passion that goes with it and what was expressed was really given to Philip and Betsy. And it was to say, now can you take this and convert this into something that has that feel, that emotion, that creates an emotional response. And creative people like Philip, it's inside their hearts. And he was listening to all this stuff. He didn't say a lot, by the way. He just listened a lot because he was going to develop and it was going to surface out what will this look like? What will this feel like? The world sees the 1/3. The 2/3 is us living into it. And so all the things that Doug said are spot on, but all we can do as graphics is say, hey, this is what we are, and then we have to live into it. So what does it look like? The 3 words. Inclusive. Now, graphic people and people who understand graphic and talk about graphics, it can drive you nuts with all kinds of innuendos and subtleties. But there's some very specific reasons why things are done, and I'm just going to give you top line. This inclusive nature is in a lowercase, and it leans forward. It leans forward, and what that is implying is that we're reaching out. Outside of this building, out there in the community. I have not been here for 40 years. I've been here for 10, so I don't carry a lot of baggage. The point is, I do know, and it's the reason I drive a long ways to get here, we reach out into this community, we reach out into the state, it's inclusive. It's reaching. The typeface is such that it's an action move. Is everybody that sees this going to get that? Absolutely not. However, it sets a basis for us. Because over time, and I think the dean pointed out, we live into this. We live into it. So inclusive is done that way, relative to trying to communicate, not trying to, it does communicate the impression. Inspiring. Now, if you come here and you're not inspired, I think you've got a mental issue. That can't be. If you don't get pumped up when Raymond's doing his thing, you're dead. I don't know. But seriously, it is inspiring to just be here. And therefore, caps, vertical, standing up, strength. We are inspired to be here as a community. We want to share that with a lot of people. We're out there. But at the same time, that is why it's in caps. And every application that you'll see, we're using that particular word, will be around things that are very, very inspiring. Now, inquiring. It's probably the reason I'm here, or not here. The reason I'm come to St. Mark's is because this is a learning place. It's willing to say I don't have all the answers, but I really understand and I'm interested in what you think. So why lowercase? Because if you look at lowercase, it's got all these little circles and lines and dots. And what does that mean? Inquiring minds are searching. Left, right, up, down, over here, over there, in different theologies. Who knows? It's inquiring. A strong asset of St. Mark's. So that was the graphic. To me, Phil's a genius. And capture that in this. In this. So the 3 words, as we live into them, they'll become, we'll understand, and all the graphics is doing is at the top of that pyramid, just giving people an indication. Now, if I can do this without tripping over myself, but at least the boards are on the stand. That's cool. Thanks, Doug. You left half of it. Then we needed to look at if those are the words that describe who we are, then what will we look like in terms of the name? And you mess around with all sorts of marketing jargon, logos, this, that. What was important here is it's a signature. Think about it. It's a signature, St. Mark's. You can say it Saint, pause, breathe, Mark's. Or you can say St. Mark's. Most people say St. Mark's. If they could sit there, there's no space. You don't even breathe between those two words. So we come up with a signature. This is what we stand for. St. Mark's. If you notice here, there's nothing magic about that, except that, what's a signature? All of you and me have a signature. We have a name, words, we have a signature. My bet, and it's fair, none of our signatures look alike. If they do, people have a tendency to think about it being forgery, so that's a bad thing. Everything is different. It expresses our personality. It expresses who we are. Philip did a lot of work in how this looks. The reason it's set up the way it is that, and the typeface is clean. It's not abstract, it's clean. It's not old, it's not new, it's clean. It breathes. If you think about inquiry, inclusivity, we can move through here. St. Mark's, you can move in, you can move out, you can be in the building, you can be in a food line, you can be in a pride parade. It breathes in and out. That's our signature. We don't have a logo. We are who we are. We don't need a symbol. This is our signature. This is who we are. This is what we look like. The beauty of this design, this is the creative genius that goes on, is that this has a boatload of applications. And that's beautiful. If you ever take a look, the first time I was here 10 years ago, someone gave me a list of all the programs that were going on, and I saw 160. You know, and I mean, that's a lot to swallow. Now, it's probably been scaled back to 158. But nevertheless, there's a lot. There's a lot. And so we need to be able to use our signature to adapt for different programs, for different applications, for a concert that would be in the cathedral, for something that's out on the lawn, for a educational program, a liturgy, whatever. We can use our signature any way we want to. And that's the beauty of this. And it keeps moving. It keeps moving. And so that we've got a lot of applications on how to use it. Now, are all these, do all of these represent what's going to happen forward? No. We were trying a lot of different things because part of the task force job was to test that. Does it have application? So we're trying all kinds of different movements. And this is going to evolve over time. As we see a new program, how do we utilize our signature? What word fits it, or words? Now, as Phil was quick to point out, and by the way, doing what I'm doing on behalf of somebody else is a tad scary, and I know he's going to grade me at the end of this, but nevertheless, there's the beautiful use of color. We can use color. We're not stuck with one color. Why should we be? Look up on the wall. I'm an 8 o'clocker most of the time. And you catch it every now and then, the sun coming through. That's a boatload of colors. So why should we be green, blue, yellow, purple? We're all that. We're holistic. We're inclusive. Hello? So we can use those colors based upon what is the application. And it gives people that are involved in designing things for different programs a lot of flexibility also. Yet it's all consistent. It's still consistent. And that's part of, I think the dean pointed out that the repetitiveness of who we are is going to be the fact that you're going to always see us basically look the same way with variations on a theme. Now, last, the beauty of this building. This building has a whole bunch of stuff, and many people out here probably know a lot more about it than I do. I finally found the map that somebody printed about 4 weeks ago, and now I can find both men's rooms. It's cool. I know where certain things are. It's a big place. There's a lot going on. And one could say, this is overwhelming. Not necessarily so. It can also be a place to sit there and be who you want to be. One of Philip's photos. Powerful. You can be there and you're really not by yourself, but you are. I sometimes come to the 8 o'clock service because basically I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to just think. I get there 15 minutes early and just let it all come in and let it all hang out. You can do this. It's your time, if you choose to. You can do it anytime. Or, now if you don't like this, something's wrong. you can inquire, inspire, inclusive. If that doesn't say that, what does? So there we are. The next generation, I got grandkids. That could be one of my granddaughters. The next generation, holding something that's really, really important to her. Again, using color. It's clean, it's crisp, it tells a story. Not complicated, like our branding statement. Or it expands into the whole family. And the connection between the clergy and the spirituality and what this place is all about and kids. Now, I'm a grandpa too, so this kind of gets me teared up to put this puppy up here. But nevertheless, that's really what it's all about. So what we've tried to do, not what we've tried to do, what we have done in the branding statement was try to begin to get a grip on what everyone in this room and beyond has the feeling of what St. Mark's means to them. That was a reasonably tall order. It was a reasonably tall order. But we really worked hard at it, and a lot of effort means nothing. But we looked at a lot of great information that you created. And I'm going to say this similar to what Doug said. One of the things that really made all this really work is Betsy kept us, as a friend of mine said years ago, nipping at our heels. In other words, staying on task, not losing it, and allowing us on this task force to express our opinions. And it was a microcosm of what this whole community is all about. Listening, cooperative, collegial, looking for consensus, agreeing, disagreeing, never hating. Working. I think that's what this is all about. And that's what we tried to do, or not tried to do, what Philip did with the graphics and the utilization. Now, I've said a lot of stuff which can drive you nuts. Over the course of the months ahead, you'll begin to see this being played out. I think what would be kind of nifty is that you'll have some of a background on what it means. Secondly, if you have opinions, this is an open, inclusive, inquiring community. Express them, because things can be adapted. But we're going to move. This is going to be this is who we are. And it's nothing unless we live into it. Thanks for your attention. I don't know how to close this, so I have no clue. Oh, yeah. Betsy, you're passing out stickers.
Intended.